Hello, all you fine folks out there. What are we doing today, Bobby?
Today we are going to be doing our first video on BattleTech, a topic we have mentioned in several other videos, but we're finally going to get into actually discussing the universe it's set in, the lore, the game, etc., etc.
That sounds entertaining.
So, the bare bones basics. BattleTech is a universe where a game it's primarily a game universe. Although numerous novels have been written, there was a cartoon series in the 90s.
Cartoon's great.
It's free on YouTube if you want to look it up somewhere. It is, I'm not doing it's kind of canon.
We can explain that in the future.
Yeah, we'll do a video on that whole thing sometime. So anyway, like I said, there's numerous novels. There are all kinds of source books. There's tons of background and lore. And yeah, this is the current box set for the main game itself. I've got some of the others that are currently available down here. But anyway, the lore itself is spread out among all kinds of sources. Like you could jump in and it'd be a while before you come back up for air. So this shows you the contents of the boxes. So the gist of the whole thing is you play as either if you're going the RPG route, a character, or you're playing a group or an army. In generally speaking, the time frame people play in is year 3025 to 3151. 3152 is the current, like that's where the lore's at right now. But most of the lore in the original game starts in 3025. Mankind has spread throughout the galaxy to, I believe, roughly 1,000 light years from Earth, if I recall correctly, in roughly every direction. If you ever look at it on a two-dimensional map, it is a circle, but it's called the inner sphere because obviously space is three-dimensional. And by that point in time, there are 5 major powers that control known human space, plus a handful of people at the periphery and a few minor powers here and there, and all kinds of mercenary factions. So that's where the game begins, and then as you progress through the timeline, several events occur which cause technological advancements, which is basically their way of updating and providing new weapons and battle mechs and things as the timeline advances. Now, as the boxes here show, the giant robots on the front of each of these.
Mechs, not robots.
I know, we'll get there. But everyone calls them giant zombie robots. But
Yes,
to Chad's point, they are battle mechs. They are piloted. They're not like remote controlled.
Or AI controlled.
Yeah. We'll probably touch on that in another video, but bear in mind, this is a franchise that started back in the 80s. This is very much the future as envisioned from the 1980s. There is no such thing as a strong AI in this setting.
Nope.
Like drone warfare is not much of a thing. It's starting to enter into it in 3150 era. But basically these things are tanks on legs, okay? Armed to the teeth.
Also, to make it clear, like it is from the 1980s, car manufacturers in some sources for the lore make like the engines and power sources for the mechs.
Yeah, it's debatable if they're the same companies or if they just took the names, but yes, if you look, one of the sources of lore are the technical readouts, which are books that contain the technical readouts of battle mechs, vehicles, infantry weapons, aerospace fighters, a handful of actual naval units, like the Blue Water Navy, not the Space Navy. That's also a thing, because Stellar Empire. So in there, they all have little write-ups. They mention which manufacturer makes the, typically what planet they're manufactured on, And so yes,
They mentioned some of the notable pilots as
notable
well.
pilots, the weapons loadout of whatever the primary configuration is, because these things are somewhat modular. So, but yes, to Chad's point, if you read several of the names will be familiar, and then there's also some new ones that will eventually become familiar because they're notorious, like Quicksell. If you absolutely have to have tanks, maybe they don't work the best, but if you've got a bunch of money and want a bunch of metal, they'll give it to you. It might work, you know. So in sequence here, this is the beginner box, which comes with 2 miniatures. They're provided unpainted. You do not have to paint them if you don't want to. I'm sure there's all kinds of people that don't. I painted some of mine. It's a work in progress.
I have a bunch of them unpainted.
Yes, I'll probably die before I get all of mine painted. So
I'm not going to be that pessimistic about it.
I'm a realist.
Mine will get painted someday.
But pessimistic is I won't paint any more of them. I will paint more of them. But anyway, so this comes with 2 beginner set of the rules, and also Alpha Strike cards for the mechs. That is one of the 2 primary methods of gameplay at the moment. There's a couple of others, but the primary ones are what they call classic, which is very, very detail oriented. You have a whole record sheet for each individual battle mech. It's divided up into sections like the arms, the legs, the head, the torso, the rear torso.
Even the torso is split up into like
Yeah, the torso
left,
sections.
right, and center torso.
And where things are is important, because like if your left arm gets blown off and that's where like a large laser was, well now you no longer have that. And if munitions were stored there, they might explode and start doing damage into the torso and so on and so on. And you might eventually hit the reactor and go nuclear.
Yeah, or you might get lucky and on your head take out your opponent's legs and then be free to maneuver around behind them.
Yeah. I mean, the mech's not out of action with one leg, but
If you take out that second one though,
it's limited to what it can do.
there's only so much of an arc it can shoot at.
Right. Well, I mean, then there's the headshot, which if you do it right, it's the instant kill, because the pilot sits in the head typically.
Yeah.
Unlike the Gundam universe, where the pilots are in a more intelligent place to be, buried under all the armor in the torso, battle mech pilots have to be able to see. So they're up in the head. Also, because of the way the mechs move, they have what's called a neuro helmet, which uses their sense of stability to keep the mech stabilized.
And that's why most of the mechs are bipedal.
Yes.
There are very few quadruped
Quadruped. Yeah.
mechs in lore for BattleTech.
Yeah. The ones that do exist are even more tanks on legs in appearance, especially the old version of the Goliath. It literally was just a tank with 4 legs.
Some of those actually are, land mech, tank mechs, where they can change between tank and mech.
I don't remember right off the top of my head what that's called, but yes, there is one, at least one, I think there's a couple, that can transform into a tank mode. There are a handful of mechs, because of certain aspects of the background for some of these, that are what they call land-air mechs. They can transform into an aerospace fighter, because when the game was first published, so some of the designs were from Macross, and so the BattleTech mechs from Macross were like the Phoenix Hawk and a couple others, and so because of legal issues, they had to stop using those. Now they can reuse the designs, but they haven't really embraced the land-air mech concept, because I'm pretty sure they're just trying to dodge further lawsuits, and I can't say I blame them. You know, you got a property, you don't want to spend all your time in court.
The in-lore reason they don't use land-air mechs is since they transform, the parts are more complicated to be able to scrounge up if it's damaged, I believe.
Yes, that's one of the 3 lore reasons. The second one is your pilot has to be both an aerospace pilot and a mech pilot. And then number 3 is because the vast majority of them were destroyed in what were called the Succession Wars. I think there was one production line left that survived till somewhere around 3050, and it got destroyed then. So, in lore, they exist, they're out there, but they're very rare, and in game, they kind of neutered the rules from what I understand. They used to be super awesome, and now they're not. But they do, in a large enough game, they do fulfill very specific roles, primarily as harassers, because they're not quite as good as the mech that they're designed from, and they're not quite as good as the aerospace fighter, but it's a mech that can move with the speed of an aerospace fighter, so it can zip across the board in no time. So if you've got an opponent that's got stuff in the back line that you need harassed, hit and run is what you're going for there. That's their basic use now.
Isn't there something in the rules for the game also that the rarer the mech, the harder it is to repair if you have a repair truck in the game?
If you're going for, as I understand it, primarily like the Elster rules, if you're going for like campaign rules where you have to deal with salvage and paying to repair things between missions, I believe the parts are considered very costly. I wouldn't be surprised if you had to have like a specialty person that can repair them. You know, that's speculation on my part because I haven't looked at the rules, but I know that they are difficult to repair.
So you believe BattleTech, like certain other games, has rules in place for campaign settings, pretty much?
I know they do. So that kind of comes to so you bought the beginner box, what now? That's what this box is for.
Well, first you need to open that one.
Well,
Well, I don't mean us here. I mean, like,
yes,
you want to open this, play it some.
Yes, you fine folks will want to open the box, examine the contents, and play it before you move on to the next one.
Yes, because this
maybe,
one is a step up.
Maybe not. Maybe you look at this like, man, this is awesome. I gotta have more of this. I don't even care what's in here. Then sure, go ahead. Sure.
If you just like the figures that come with it, go ahead.
So,
sort of why I got some of them.
So the bigger box here, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. We're going to try to do an unboxing video here to show you what's inside, but this comes with 8 plastic battle mechs versus the 2 that are in here. And this jumps you up to a larger game. This is just going to be like a one-on-one. The typical military unit used by the major powers is called a lance, and it is typically 4 battle mechs. Some of them use augmented lances that involve tanks and fighters and all kinds of other jazz. That's not in here. But at its full broadening, BattleTech can be a combined arms game where you use more than just the battle mechs. You use artillery, aerial combat, infantry, and the works. Okay, but the focus is the battle mechs. But the other things all do have their parts, especially if you're in like a long-term campaign, because then a bunch of other things start to come into play, like recon and salvage and achieving goals where infantry are better than anything else to use. But in just a straight-up battle, most people just go mech versus mech, and then some people drift into vehicles and,
Bobby, are you saying in a campaign, if I need to take over a control center, I can't use my battle mech for that?
Well, no, because much like in real life, like a fighter jet can't monitor a street corner. Like you need infantry for that. So, yeah.
Also, battle mech's probably not going to actually fit into the room the control center is in.
No, the battle.
So you're going to need to send infantry in to secure that.
Yeah, if the battle mech attempts that, there won't be a control center anymore.
It's just going to be squashed.
Yeah. So, like I said, this comes with 8 mechs, so that's 1 lance versus another lance. And also the Alpha Strike cards, the record sheets for one version of the mechs, I believe. Because like I mentioned, they're somewhat modular, so there are specific like known variants for each of them that have different weapon loadouts. And if you're going really into it, you also deal with like the targeting computer, the certain other command and control functions. Certain computers link up the battle mechs.
Certain ones keep your ammunition from blowing up on you.
Yeah, there's certain other features like that. Then as the timeline
certain
advances,
ones are anti-missile too.
Yeah, there's anti-missile systems. There are different types of armor. There's your straight up armor. There's your better armor that the clans brought with them. And then there's like, I believe this isn't just from the video games and the clicky tech game. There are anti-laser armors as well as anti-ballistic armor specifically.
And then there's probably lighter armor than the base armor, for you can take that extra space and weight and devote it to other things.
Given the way everything else in the game operates, I would assume so. And then you can also put anti-aircraft weapons on there should you feel so inclined. Some of the mechs have underwater variants that have watertight armor and torpedoes, space variants.
And what determines what you can put on your mech is the chassis has a maximum weight and size capacity, I believe.
Yes.
So, like, you have to balance your offensive and defensive and passive and active systems to be effective.
Right, and then on top of that, the players agree to a certain, what they call battle value, which tries to take into account the mechs, the weapons, the tonnage, and all that, to try to give you like a rough, like, this is worth X number of points, and you're both limited to those points. Unless you're playing some kind of scenario where, you know, like any number of things can go into the scenario.
The Battle of Tukid?
Yeah, I mean, there could be all kinds of things. So that's what's in this, and if you look this up, this is known as the Game of Armored Combat box. And then finally, this is from the Kickstarter from, I believe it's 3 years ago now.
Something like that.
But because of global issues, it finally got completely fulfilled, and all this is like on the shelves now. Now, this box in particular, this cover, this is the Kickstarter cover. The actual one you'll find on the shelves will probably not be this. Retailers could have ordered those, so you might see these in the wild, but you'll probably see one that has a different mech entirely on the front. But if it says Clan Invasion, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
This
it
is
says
Clan Invasion box.
The contents will be the same as what are in this one. Now, this one, at a certain point in the timeline, 3050, a group from outside known space. This is a whole complicated backstory to how they got there. They are human, but now, thanks to other things, they're slightly modified. And
slightly.
Yeah. Genetic tinkering and cybernetics in some cases. They're incredibly warlike. Like their whole society is built around war, honor, victory, the whole deal. They're called the clans because they're divided up among, I believe by the time they come to the inner sphere, there's 18 of them left. There were 20, and I believe 2 were destroyed. I know for sure one was. I think there was 2 that were destroyed.
Yeah, I believe there were 2 that were destroyed.
So, because occasionally they fight each other with a winner-take-all attitude. But that's also how they resolve all of their conflicts. The 2 parties that are fighting, they agree to some kind of contest.
Of skill.
Of skill. No, they do coin tosses too.
Well, that's a type of skill.
I mean, it's a guess, but okay. It's literally leaving it up to fate. But
yeah.
Now, most of them are not, but in the fiction, I believe there's at least one instance of using coin toss. Usually, it's either a fight with battle mechs, or
betting on who will come out victorious with the fewest assets used, correct?
Usually, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. Now, other times it'll be a fist fight, a knife fight, a laser pistol fight. One instance, it was an American football game. Yeah. So the clans are big about American football, and that's also one little quirk about the setting. Is, like I said, it's the future of what we know essentially now and from the 80s to now. So the various realms speak languages from Earth we would recognize now. Okay, the clans in particular speak American English. House Steiner speaks German officially, which is odd given their founding, but that's the way it wound up.
Their founding's actually Irish and a couple of other things.
Right, but I think it was within the second generation of their leaders, the wife of one of them basically takes the reins, and she's the first Steiner, and everything goes from there to House Steiner, which is German. Then House Davian, I don't know if it's English or French. They're modeled more after the French than the English, I'm given to understand. but I believe the official language is English, like proper English.
The Queen's English.
Yeah, the Queen's English. House Lao, it's Mandarin. Even though they're a mishmash of Chinese and Russian, and with more of a bent towards like the Han Dynasty, with like the old Soviet like secret police and things like that mixed in. So there are Russian words in there, but it tilts way more towards the Chinese aspect. House Merrick, I think they speak English primarily, but I will have to actually double check that. They are the only thing remotely resembling a democracy in the future. All those others are feudal states. They have one leader who has basically supreme power in both the political and military sense, and everyone beneath them are vassals. You know, they rule from one planet, and they rule their empires of hundreds of worlds. So
isn't House Merrick a democracy simply because their territory fights among itself as much as out towards other opponents?
well, I think that's more because they're a democracy. It's more because they're more free spirited, and there isn't the hereditary ruler. So the others all work on a hereditary ruler system, whereas the House Merrick, like I said, I believe you have to be elected to be I think it's the Captain General is the title.
I think it is.
And that's as much politicking as anything. The name counts too.
Except for, they're not the ones with the inept generals for some reason.
No. Well, they have all kinds of experience fighting each other. Steiner, you do occasionally see non-Steiners on the throne.
But it is rare.
It's rare. There's a group, I believe it's called the Estates Generals, that have to approve whoever's going to be the Archon. But
if you got the backing of the previous Archon, you're pretty much in.
Yeah.
Steiner has what they call social generals.
Yes, House Steiner is the super rich faction.
That's simply because during the Succession Wars, their production base was kept intact.
Yeah. The Succession Wars, there were 4 of them, from the year 2750 to the year 3039. Actually, the Clan Invasion might be the end of the 4th Succession War in 3050. So somewhere in there, we'll do a deep dive on the lore, get the dates right on that. But essentially, the 5 main houses, there was a 6th house, House Cameron, that ruled the Star League, the Star League is all of human-controlled space.
Yes.
House Cameron controlled Earth and a certain distance around Earth. It was called the Terran Hegemony. And the last ruler of House Cameron was assassinated by Stefan Amorous in the Amorous coup. And basically it took, I believe, over a decade of fighting to finally dislodge him from Earth.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, the 5 remaining House Lords each declared themselves the new Star Lord, the new ruler of the Star League.
Well,
and
the other 4 wouldn't stand for that.
Right. So basically, they've been fighting ever since. The first 2 Succession Wars saw just untold destruction. Whole planets made completely uninhabitable by nuclear, chemical, biological attacks.
Other planets bombed back to the Stone Age, pretty much.
Also, there were planets that had to have terraforming equipment to maintain survivability, and that fell into disrepair because there was no central government anymore. So, for a number of these factions, the deeper into your territory, away from your borders, your important infrastructure was, the better. Because of the method of travel between star systems in BattleTech, it's an instantaneous jump, but it has a range of 30 light years at most.
Which means that you have highways between systems.
Yeah, so you can jump in instantly, but then it takes a week to recharge your ship. And you don't want to jump in anywhere near the planets, so they typically jump in above or below the elliptical disk, if I recall correctly, or farther out at pirate jump points. and then it takes the ship a week to recharge. Well, in the meantime, once the jump ship gets there, it dislodges the drop ships, which then typically go on a high-speed burn to whatever the inhabitable planet is, bringing the giant death machines to go do their thing. Well, on the borders, everyone just starts fighting, and no one can make any progress because everyone moves at the same speed. So, you'll take a planet, and 6 months later, the other side will take it right back, and you'll be right back where everybody started, because no one can build up enough stuff fast enough because of the massive loss of infrastructure. Because in the first and second succession wars, all 5 houses took the view of, if we can't have it, no one can. And so
Salt the earth, people.
And that kind of goes back to the BattleTechs, the
land air
mix, because their infrastructure, they needed so many specialty parts. Well, it all got destroyed. So, and the sides all kind of had to agree to stop destroying jump ships at a certain point. Otherwise, interstellar travel is going to become impossible.
Yeah.
Because they're clearly critical targets. So yeah, I mean, it got to the point during the third and fourth succession wars where basically the factions could replace stuff roughly as fast as they were losing it. They couldn't build up enough to make the big push. It basically became World War I in space. The only thing that really broke things up was once House Steiner and Davian combined and then tried to devour House Lau, which did not work for them. Then they tried to devour House Kurita, which didn't work either. And then eventually they broke up after the clans showed up, and they did start devouring things.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you had some inner political squabbles between two of the heirs for Houses Steiner and Davian that caused the whole Civil War with that. But so this box represents the clan invasion era, and so it comes with 5 mechs and two things of their battle armor, which are called elementals. That's a human scaled suit essentially. Now I say human, elementals are about 8 feet tall, and then there's the armored suit. Because remember what I said, genetic manipulation.
The clans, don't they have a different name for their base unit?
They do. They use what's called a star, which is 5 battle mechs as opposed to 4. And then...
Which is why this one comes with 5 mechs.
Yeah.
You have a complete star here.
Yes, and you can augment it with the elementals, or you can use them with, or however you want to do it. Clan battle mechs, some of them have the ability to carry the battle armors into battle with them. Now, the battle armor works on a different principle. Each of the mechs in a star is called a point. I believe
That's why there's 5 people.
and I believe 5 of the elementals constitutes a point. So a star of elementals would be 25 elementals. And then a certain number of stars equals a galaxy. Well, two stars is a binary, 3 is a trinary. I want to say it's 5 is a galaxy, but I could be wrong on that. Because I do not have their, beyond the base level, I don't have numbers. Like, I couldn't tell you how many is in I think 12's in a company. I think it's 4 companies to a battalion. And then I couldn't tell you beyond that. And then there's augmented companies where you have a command lance. And it gets very complicated. House Lau does their own thing where they have augmented lances that's 4 mechs and 2 vehicles. Everyone does their own thing. And you're not bound to do any of that in the game. That's just how they are generally set up, and that's how things are kind of made to work for the rules.
So those are the base units. You can take a unit and swap out 2 mechs for however many tanks will equal the element power.
Right. Now, again, since I don't play classic BattleTech, I have to go off what I hear. But what I understand is there is a fairly even matchup between the contents of these 2 boxes. The 5 clan mechs, because the clan mechs are wildly superior, versus all 8 of the mechs in this. There is one of the configurations for each side that their battle value comes out very close. So it is mostly an even fight. Like I said, the clans, warlike, so their technology has been advancing all this time.
Their combat technology.
Well, also their medical technology.
This is true, because you do have to come back into the fight quickly.
Yeah, they have far more advanced medical technology than the spheroids do. That's what they call the history. So the 8 in here, like I said, 2 Lances versus the Star, because of the technological gap. Now, as the timeline advances, because this was in 3050, and I said the current era is 3150, the clans invaded. There was a kind of a second push at one point, but the Inner Sphere hit back. They completely destroyed one of the clans and invaded clan space to show that they meant business.
The Hammer and Anvil mission.
And the phone company got involved too. Comstar.
AT&T in space.
It's AT&T in space. So imagine AT&T
with an army,
but with their own army. So pay your phone bills or find out. So anyway, some of the clans were basically stuck in the Inner Sphere because of how much they had to commit. And then the clans that remained back home
started to see the invading clans as
they believed that the
tainted.
invaded clans had been tainted by the Inner Sphere because they began to adopt their ways. So there was a clan civil war, and the clans that were in the Inner Sphere had to pack up everything they could and skedaddle and completely commit to the Inner Sphere. And since then, we have not heard from the homeworld clans. They either bombed themselves into oblivion, secluded themselves to come back again, or other. Who knows?
One of the destroyed clans returned and took it over.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And I should have mentioned this a while ago. There are no intelligent aliens in the BattleTech universe. It's all human, except for one single book where there is a species that's arguably intelligent. There's some kind of bird people, and that was like a missed jump, and I don't even know if they know where they wound up. So don't expect to see aliens of any kind anywhere in the BattleTech franchise.
And I believe the lore reason is because there's not that many inhabitable planets.
Well, there's other creatures.
Yeah.
And there's some that are approaching intelligent. But we're talking like dolphins and monkeys compared to us, essentially.
So humans are first here.
Yeah. There's no spacefaring other race. There's plenty of stupid to go around with just humans. Don't worry.
Oh yeah.
As one person put it, the BattleTech universe has make sure I get this right, has both a startling lack of wisdom and foresight. They do not learn their lessons from what has happened. They do not think things through all the way. Like it is a huge chain of unintended consequences, just like real life. So these people make the kind of mistakes that you expect real people to make. They're not perfect antagonists or protagonists, depending on which one. Which is the other part. Who the protagonists and antagonists are is entirely a matter of opinion in most points of the franchise. There is no such thing as the good guys. There are the not quite as bad as some of the other guys.
And they all have their good and bad points. Don't get us wrong.
Yeah, I mean, some of them you've got to search for those good points, because there are definitely they're the really bad people.
Like, what is it? House Lao?
House Lao is known, particularly online, for being very duplicitous and underhanded. House Lao is also the smallest of the realms in terms of space.
Well,
they don't have what you call tactical depth. They have a lot of planets and a lot of people, but they don't have tactical depth. They can't afford to lose space. They can't trade space for time like some of the other realms can. So they do what it takes to win, because that's their only choice.
Well,
and the others who want to fight fair, they don't take kindly to things like biological attacks and
nukes.
Well, no one uses nukes if they can help it, because they're gonna get nuked by everyone else if they do. But yeah, like
I was more thinking, isn't it House Lao where you can be punished for your father's and grandfather's crimes? Or is that Kurita?
No, that's Kurita.
Okay.
Lao, theoretically, everyone is on an even keel, and if you have the skills, you can rise above. And they don't hold your parentage against you. Now, you'll never rule the realm unless you're a Lao, but just below that, maybe. House Kurita is Space Japan, essentially, and they're very big into the Bushido code, honor, and the taint of a misdeed will stain the generations. Like, your grandfather upset the wrong person, like, you're going to be picking rice. Like, you will not, or you're going to go dark and join the Yakuza or something. Everyone always bags on House Lao. House Kirita is every bit as like strict and controlling as House Lao is. It's just they're kind of cool because it's space Japan. Some of their mechs have swords
and samurai armor.
Yeah, so that everyone kind of gives them a pass, even though they ignore things like the Kentari's massacre, where I don't remember which Kirita got killed, and then his son literally ordered the entire population of the planet to be killed in revenge.
Wow.
And most of that was like up close and personal, with swords and guns and whatnot. So yeah, like House Lao does evil stuff, but Kentari's. So yeah, the clans are also like Clan Smoke Jaguar completely destroyed Turtle Bay over them continually rising up against them, and that's why they were chosen to be totally destroyed by the Inner Sphere.
And I believe it's Clan Snow Fox would sell their gene parents for the right amount of credits.
Sea Fox.
Sea Fox.
Yeah, Sea Fox are the merchants.
Yeah, they will sell you anything if the price is right.
Right. So
including the technology for clan mechs and all that.
So that kind of ties into where I was going with this. These clans have had 100 years to adapt to the Inner Sphere, and the Inner Sphere factions have had 100 years to get a hold of their technology and reverse engineer it. So by 3150, there's a lot of clan technology in the hands of the Inner Sphere forces. So there's a lot of variants of the battle mechs from way back when.
Those are usually the 2Cs.
That now have, the 2Cs are ones created by the clans.
Okay.
That's a little designation. The clans, whenever they left, took all the mechs they could with them, and the ones they thought were really cool, good, whatever, they built clan versions of them. They're called the 2C variants. Instead of it being just an Atlas 2, it's a 2C because it's a 2 because it is a different mech, and then the C is its clan technology in it. And a lot of them have jump jets, I've noticed.
Well, that's because they have better heat sinks, better armor to where they can afford the weight of the jump jets.
So, but not everything got a 2C, like the Atlas did not.
No, it does not have a 2C. That's primarily because most of them actually were taken with the Star League.
The Exodus fleet.
Yeah, with the Exodus fleet.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that they didn't create a 2C of it.
No, because
I've seen speculation it's because the guy that was the top dog, Alexander Kerensky, is the guy that designed the Atlas.
yes, it was his pet project.
And the clans, since they venerate him above all others, would have been like, no, we can't improve upon perfection. So,
Yep.
even though they clearly can.
Which means
Because the Dire Wolf is a much better mech.
you don't get the ability to paint a skull onto the cockpit so readily.
Be the change you want to see, Chad. Just paint a skull on the front. Sure, it will look totally wrong,
Yes.
but or paint it on the top. There's a big flat section.
It just won't look right.
So anyway, now hopefully we can get this up before Gen Con, because they're going to be, everything working out. There will be some purchases at Gen Con, because there's a new box. There are two new box sets coming out. One is a new version of this. So whenever we do the unboxing of this, and we're going to do, if we can get a hold of the other one, we're going to do the unboxing of that. We're going to compare the content side by side. I believe the main difference at the moment is one of the battle mechs is different. Because this one has a Griffin and a Wolverine, unless I'm mistaken here. Well, I know for a fact it has a Wolverine, but I believe the other one is a Griffin. And so...
With these two, it tells you what's in them.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be quick. I'm sure it is here. Well, anyway, for the moment I'm going to assume it's a Griffin and a Wolverine. The Wolverine I'm sure on, I believe the other one is the Griffin. So anyway, this one also has a Wolverine in it. So they're getting rid of the Wolverine from this and replacing it with, I believe it's a Vindicator. I'll know for sure once I see the box, but I believe it's a Vindicator.
You could have done an Atlas though.
No, not for the beginner box. You'd have to make the other one a 100-ton mech also. So it'd probably be like a die sheet or something, or it'd be a die sheet. So anyway, so that means that there will not be overlap between these two boxes like there is now. So if you do buy both of these, you will have two Wolverines.
I mean,
which is fine. You know, Wolverine's a fine workhorse mech. Every single power uses it, so you know there's not a problem with that. But it's going to increase variety. Now, in addition to these, okay,
real quick,
so that's this.
There are certain mechs that are commonly considered to be only one faction's mech, but with how everybody scavenge all off the battlefield, you can have any reason to have any mech on your force if you're playing.
Right. As long as you're not playing with someone who's going to be really strict on like the timeline or something. Like if you're playing a game in 3025, set in the inner sphere, you shouldn't be using any of these because this is clan technology and they don't even know it exists yet. But there are variants of all of these for 3025. But as long as you're not going that strict, then yeah, you can justify one or a few of basically anything in anybody's possession. Because after the battles, whoever wins, typically like they go and collect the battle mechs that are still semi-functional, and then they repair them. So
I'd have scavengers out even after the ones that weren't really functional, just get parts that were still good.
Yeah, as long as you got time, because usually like the clock's ticking. Because of physics, once your jump ship enters the system, it could take up to a week for your drop ships to hit the planet. Well, in that time, they've sent a signal to their neighboring planet in the next system over, hey, we're under attack. So they're heading out to their jump ship to come in and reinforce them. So you've got to hit and get out, or hit and reinforce. And so there's a lot of raiding. So if you have time, yeah, you can pick up everything you can. So don't worry about that. The other box is for Alpha Strike, and it is the quicker version of the game. Uses their cards, far more stripped down. Instead of the giant schematic of the mech with all the different parts, it's literally just you have this many armor components, this many structural components. You go through those, you're dead.
Also a toned down critical hit table.
Yeah, toned down critical hit table. All the damage, instead of being able to fire each individual weapon and having to track ammunition and hits and everything, you just have here's your short range damage, medium range damage, long range damage.
And each of those ranges is a set distance.
Yeah.
It depending on how you look at it, can nerf certain sniper units.
Yeah, it's nowhere near as granular. So there's a lot of detail in the classic BattleTech that you're going to miss out on, like the advantages of certain targeting computers, armor types, stuff like that. So if you want that, you want to go classic BattleTech, or I've actually seen someone has come up with like a hybrid of in between. It still uses a record sheet, but it's more streamlined, but you still keep track of where you've been hit and some of the components, but there's just less it takes to destroy the mechs, basically. So that makes the game goes faster.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Alpha Strike box comes with 13 battle mechs because it has 2 Lances of Inner Sphere mechs and a Star of Clan mechs.
Okay.
Right off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what's in there. A number of them are repeats. Not necessarily of these 2 boxes, but there's also a bunch of Lance and Star Pack boxes. But most of them are ones that are out right now already. There are 2 new ones. There are a couple that the machines are in different weapon configurations or poses. So, because if they have different weapons, it should theoretically be visible. You know, like if you got like a rifleman, it's a mech that has like 2 big arms with guns on them. One of the variants, they have rotary autocannons, which basically means gigantic Gatling guns.
Another variant of that has a giant sensor dish on the top, making it look like it's wearing a Stetson or sombrero.
Yeah. So these kind of things should be visible, but this game is not what you see is what you get.
No, it is not WYSIWYG.
So beyond that, you don't even have to use the miniatures. Like you can go to an official tournament, to the best of my knowledge, and just use stand-ins, if there is such thing as an official tournament. And as long as you can tell what's what, you can use anything. But obviously, the miniatures are really cool.
They are.
But there is an alternative, and I will show you that in the unboxing videos that comes with these. So,
you don't have to just get your mechs from these boxes either, or the little booster boxes they sell. There's a company that makes pewter mechs for it.
yes.
And they actually have licensing from Catalyst saying that they can.
Yeah, tops.
Tops. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a whole deal with who owns the rights to what, with which parts. Like Microsoft owns the video game rights. Tops, the trading card company, owns the physical game, which they license to Catalyst to make the game, to Ironwind Metals to make the miniatures. And somewhere along the way, I believe the understanding is Catalyst has to get Ironwind Metals permission to use the miniatures here. At least that's the way it's been explained to me. So yeah, it's very entangled, mainly because of whenever FASA went out of business in the 90s, coupled with when WizKids bought the rights, and then they got bought by Tops. And just it's all over the place, and it's probably why we'll never see a BattleTech movie or TV show. Even though it would be Game of Thrones in space with giant robots.
I'm sold, people.
Yeah,
I am sold on that alone.
yeah.
So long as the last season don't take a nosedive.
Well, so far the L-Clan era, still got its ups and downs.
But technically, with BattleTech, there's the chance that the last season would just be mass usage of nukes by everyone.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? So, just depends on what they want to focus on. I assume the first Somerset Strikers, but you never know.
That is a good choice. That is. It's almost like they've done that before.
Yeah, it would be going over. Maybe Nikolai Malthus won his lawsuit finally.
Or maybe they go with, like, after that is supposed to be set,
Yeah.
and they actually, in the background you see scenes from it. That way it's like, hey, this is canon, and
Yeah.
here's how the cartoon's canon.
Yeah.
If you don't know, the cartoon they did is considered sort of canon because it's considered to be an actual show in the lore.
In universe, within the BattleTech universe, the cartoon series was a TV show. So the events in it are highly fictionalized. Like something resembling them did take place.
It's like the
main characters. Is it Roderick? No.
Adam Steiner.
Adam Steiner is a real person in BattleTech, and his nemesis Nikolai Malthus of Clan Jade Falcon is also a person. Their characters are highly stylized, and the events in the cartoon, you're supposed to take them all with a grain of salt.
In universe, every episode of that show comes with the primer of this is based on historical events.
Yeah.
Based on in big, bold, underlined letters.
Yeah, it's considered propaganda, anti-clan propaganda by the clans. So Nikolai Malthus initially attempted to fight over it, and then he wound up being stuck in the Lyran court system, where he eventually lost and ended up living the rest of his life in disgrace. So, yeah.
I think he was already doing that, but...
Yeah, he had since, I believe he was no longer a mech warrior by the time the case finally settled, and had joined their version of their intel services, the Watch. So, yeah. Yeah, the clans are all about dying gloriously in battle. If you lived old age, you did something wrong.
To them, old age is like 30, 40 years old, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's simply because of how often they die in their challenges of honor and such.
Yeah. So these are the box sets that are available now. that's what's supposed to be releasing this week at Gen Con in limited quantities. They'll be filtering out into the actual retail system soon. So you might be able to still find these if you just dying to have that second Wolverine, but otherwise it's probably going to be the newer one eventually once they're in the retail chain. And then this fall they're supposed to be doing another Kickstarter,
Mercenaries.
which will be focusing on Mercenaries. The prevailing assumption is there will be another box set there. They will be including vehicles this time, along with a whole host of new mechs. I say new to the plastic
Yes.
versus the metal. The metal has
Ungodly number.
Yeah, an ungodly number of options, and they have numerous variants of several of them with the different weapon loadouts. They have the massive numbers of vehicles, the infantry.
They have metal repair trucks and
Yeah.
fuel trucks.
Yeah, the stuff that's just kind of in the periphery that would be like,
And
there would be objectives and
Deployment vehicles.
yeah,
Like
and
super heavy lifters.
and a few map scale drop ships too. So
Yeah, that is.
So that's the that's the very long short version of what BattleTech is. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Keep an eye out for more BattleTech videos because there will be more.
In case you want to jump to this point because it's too long, didn't watch. Game of Giant Stompy Robots, very fun.
Yeah. So thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for more, and we will see you folks later.
And be safe out there.
Yes.